Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving into one of the most explosive ideas of the Protestant Reformation, Martin Luther's complete takedown of free will. We're talking about his 1525 book, The Bondage of the Will, where he didn't just poke holes in our ability to choose good. No, he declared all-out war on the very concept.
I mean, just let that sink in for a second. This is so radical. Luther isn't just saying free will is, weak or a little bit broken. He's calling it the enemy. He believed that the very idea that we could chip into our own salvation wasn't just wrong. It was a dangerous deception, one that actually blocked people from finding real faith.
So, to really get a grip on a claim that huge, we have to walk through his logic. And for him, this wasn't some new idea he cooked up. He was convinced that the entire Bible, from start to finish, was on his side. You gotta understand, for Luther, this wasn't just some academic debate for theologians. This was a high-stakes battle for the heart and soul of the gospel itself. It was the Word of God versus human philosophy, and in his mind, everything was on the line.
Okay, so where does he even start building this case? Well, it all begins with a problem that he says is universal to every single human being: sin. He goes right to the Apostle Paul's letter to the Romans to lay the groundwork.
And Luther doesn't ease into it. Nope. He just unleashes this rapid-fire barrage of points straight from Paul's writing to build a case that's, frankly, pretty airtight and more than a little unsettling.
It kicks off with one simple but absolutely devastating word: all. This isn't about, most people or just the really bad people. Nope. It's everyone. A universal statement with no exceptions.
And just in case we missed the point, Paul doubles down. There is no difference. It doesn't matter if you're a religious leader, a brilliant thinker, or a king. This condition applies to everybody, equally. Nobody gets a pass.
Which brings us to the stark conclusion from Paul's letter. There is none righteous. No, not one. The number of people who can actually make themselves right with God through their own efforts, well, according to Luther's reading, that number is a big, fat zero.
And this right here gets us to the absolute core of the problem. See, for Luther, sin isn't just the bad things we do, it's the state we're in. It's a kind of bondage that every single person is born into, and it places all of us under God's judgment right from the get-go.
But okay, this brings up a pretty obvious question, right? What about the good people? The folks who spend their entire lives trying to be virtuous and do the right thing? Surely all that hard work has to count for something.
And this is where Luther makes what might be his most shocking argument. He says that even our very best, most noble efforts, they aren't just not good enough to please God, they can actually make things a whole lot worse.
But why? How does that work? Well, because when we try to achieve righteousness on our own steam, our will gets proud. It starts to think it can actually earn brownie points with God. And for Luther, that kind of self-reliance is basically a rebellion against the whole idea of God's free grace.
Okay, that leads us to another really important question. If even our best efforts are pointless, then what's the deal with moral laws? Why even have the Ten Commandments if it's impossible for us to actually keep them?
Luther's answer just completely flips the script on the whole purpose of the law. He argues that the commandments were never supposed to be a ladder we could climb to get to God. That was never the point.
Instead, the law is like a diagnostic tool. It's not the cure, it's the MRI. It has zero power to heal the disease, but man, does it give you a crystal clear picture of just how sick the patient is. So the real job of the law, in Luther's view, is to absolutely crush our pride. It's a mirror that shows us what we're really like, forcing us to give up on our own efforts and start looking for help from somewhere else entirely.
And that feeling of despair, well, it's designed to lead us somewhere. It all builds to the climax of Luther's entire argument, the one and only way out of this mess.
So if righteousness can't come from our will and it can't come from following the law, then Luther says it has to come from completely outside of us. It has to be a free gift, totally separate from anything we do or don't do.
He lays out two completely different paths. On one side, you've got the person who worketh, who tries to earn their salvation. To them, any reward would just be a wage, a debt that's owed. But Paul says that's not how it works. On the other side, you have the person who worketh not, but believeth. For them, faith itself is counted as righteousness. It's a gift given to them, freely.
And this is the mic drop moment. It's the logical endpoint. For salvation, or being justified, to truly be a free gift, it has to be Well, free. It can't be earned or deserved in any way. The second you add even a tiny bit of human effort into the mix, it stops being grace and becomes a payment.
So what does this all mean for us? What are the real-world implications of living in a world where our will is bound and our ultimate salvation is completely out of our hands?
For Luther, this wasn't some terrifying idea. It was the most liberating, comforting truth in the world. Why? Because it moved the foundation of his salvation off of his own shoulders, off of his own unreliable up-and-down efforts, and placed it squarely onto God's unshakable, faithful promise. That was the source of his confidence.
And that is the provocative question Luther leaves us chewing on. It's not just some dusty old theological debate. It's a question that forces you to really think about human ability, about divine grace, and about where, at the end of the day, you're placing all your trust.